Chapter 18. The Ninth Theory. When we got home, there was a smog in the living room caused by Aunt Gloria's cigarettes. A smog is technically a mixture of smoke, fog, and chemical fumes, but this was a mixture of smoke, and more smoke. Mum said there had been no news, but we already knew this because Dad's mobile phone had not rung. I tried to tell her and Aunt Gloria about our trip to the London Eye, but Kat started coughing, and Dad said we had had a very pleasant walk by the river. Then Kat gave Aunt Gloria the bath oil, saying it was a present from both her and me. And when Aunt Gloria looked at the label, her lips went up. She said, "Thank you, Kat, and thank you, Ted," and added that it was the kind she'd used when Salim was little. The little devil that he was, she said, forever pinching it. He liked the bubbles, blowing them up, giggling when they burst. And then she started crying, and Mum told Kat and me to go upstairs. Upstairs, Kat got out the wallet of photos and flicked through them at the rate of 1 a second. I was very excited to see them, but she wouldn't let me. In 18 seconds, 18 pictures of our back garden and the washing and the shed were all over my duvet cover. When she got to the first 18 shots, the ones taken the morning of Salim's disappearance, she slowed down. I tried to look over her shoulder, but she jerked away. She went through them twice, then dropped them on the bed as if she was no longer interested. I picked them up and looked. "Just a set of stupid touristy shots," Kat said, "like any others." There were scenes of the Houses of Parliament, Lambeth Bridge and the Eye from different angles. The best shot was the one Salim had taken of Kat and me on the Jubilee footbridge. It had Kat's face and mine close together, and behind us was half of the Eye and some bridge and the river and sky. Kat was smiling. My head was off to one side and my eyes were looking upwards as if I was thinking. Kat was taller than me. My head ended where her chin began. The last shot was the one I had taken. It had gone wrong. Instead of the London Eye, I had snapped some legs and headless bodies of the people near where we'd been queuing. I arranged the photos on my desk, alongside the souvenir shot of the capsule, in which we thought Salim had been a passenger, and the list of theories. We sat in silence. Kat breathed out long and hard. "I don't even know what I expected to find," she said, shuffling the pictures about. "I wish we'd just given Auntie Glo Salim's camera when we first found it. Now we'll have to explain why we didn't give it to her. And I bet when she sees Salim's last photos, she'll just start crying again." She picked up the shot of her and me on the footbridge and threw it down again. "A clue? As if." I picked up the photo. "Let's keep the photos and the camera safe in my room until Salim returns," I suggested. "If he returns," Kat said, biting her lip. She shook her head and swept all the photos up into a rough pile. "But I agree. There's no point upsetting Auntie Glo. You don't have to lie, Ted. Just say nothing." Then Kat picked up the list of theories. "As for this," she scrunched it up and threw it in the waste paper basket. "It's beyond us, Ted." I watched the paper crackle softly as if it was trying to reopen itself. When the corners reappeared, I took it back out of the rubbish and smoothed it flat on the desk. "Forget it, Ted," Kat said. I picked up a pen. "Let's try a process of elimination," I said. The world's most famous fictional detective, Sherlock Holmes, said that once you have eliminated all the possibilities, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true. I was eager to see if we could eliminate all the theories, except my favourite theory of all, which was that Salim had spontaneously combusted. This would not have been a good outcome for Aunt Gloria or for Salim, but it would mean that spontaneous combustion was a real phenomenon, and my discovering this would have been an advance in science. "Theories 1 and 8 can go," I began. "Today we have proved that Salim couldn't have stayed in his capsule after it came down, and he couldn't have come out hiding under somebody else's clothes." I crossed them out. "Drop it, Ted. That leaves 6. While you're at it, you can cross off the one about spontaneous explosion or whatever it's called. Theory number 5. Yeah, and the time warp one. Number 7. My pencil hovered over the list. "But supposing we eliminate all the others and—" "Oh, grow up, Ted." I wish Kat could spontaneously combust there and then, but she didn't. Her eyebrows came close together and her lips went right down, and then a tear came rolling out of her left eye and down her nose. I thought of something I hadn't thought of before. Very slowly, I drew a wavy line through theories 5 and 7, even though a strange feeling went up my esophagus. "Done," I said. Kat picked up the list as if she was interested again. She brushed off the tear. "That leaves 4 theories," she said. 2, 3, 4 and 6. "And 9, I said, remembering. 9? "The 9th theory is the one I was going to tell you about last night," I reminded her. "When the phone rang, you never wrote it down." She took the pen from me. "You never told me what it was. Out with it, Ted. It had better be good." "It is." I started dictating. "The 9th theory is that Salim never got on the eye in the first place." Kat got halfway through writing the words and stopped and said it was daft, and I said it wasn't, and she said hadn't we seen him get on, and I said we had seen what we thought was Salim, but it was just a shadow and could have been anyone. "He turned and waved," Kat said. "Lots of people might have done that," I said, "not just Salim." "But what happened to Salim then, between when we said goodbye and when he got to the top of the ramp?" I had not considered this. He might have stopped to do up his trainers and decided to not get on after all and come back down the ramp after we moved away, and then he might have looked for us but we'd vanished into the crowds, and then he might have got lost or run away or got kidnapped. Kat closed her eyes. "OK, Ted, I'm reliving the moment." I shut my eyes too, but all I could see was the wrong way round Zed and a line of boys, all Salim lookalikes, smiling and waving and saying goodbye and walking to the edge of a precipice. "Ted," Kat said. I opened my eyes. "I have to admit, it's a clever theory." A good tingling feeling went from my esophagus up to my scalp. I smiled. "But it's wrong, Ted." I stopped smiling. "Wrong. I don't expect you to understand. The boy who waved from the top of the ramp, the way he stood and looked back, the way he turned and walked on. It was Salim. I just know." "You just know?" "It's a body language thing." The good feeling I had turned bad. Body language is a form of communication, like speaking English or French or Chinese, but it has no words, only gestures. Humans and chimpanzees and meerkats and stingrays can read body language by instinct without having to learn it. But according to the doctors who diagnosed me, people with my kind of syndrome can't. We have to learn it like a foreign language, and this takes time. "You mean you saw something about the boy who waved that I didn't?" "Yes, Ted." Kat's voice was soft. She put a hand on my shoulder, which made the hairs on my neck stick up. "Trust me, it was Salim we saw. It just was." I took the pencil back from Kat and crossed off what she'd written for Theory 9. I crossed it out 3 times over. I'd thought it the best theory of all until then. Now it was dead, almost at birth. Dead as a dodo, you could say. Chapter 19. The Boy on the Train. Mum came in and Kat sat on the desk on top of the photos and the theory list. "Hi, guys," Mum said. "Hi, Mum," said Kat. She swung her legs backwards and forwards and stared into space. "This isn't much of a half-term for you, is it?" "Don't worry, Mum, we're fine." Mum smiled. Then she said the police were visiting us again and we should go downstairs in case they wanted to ask us anything. Then she went out and Kat got off the desk. She hid the theory list and the photographs in the little drawer under my desk. Then she picked up the souvenir picture and said that she'd hand it over to the police just in case it was of some use. Then she went out of my room. I reopened the drawer. I found my favourite photo, the one Salim had taken of Kat and me on the footbridge. It looked as if a corner of the London Eye was emerging from my shoulder. Then I put it in my book of weather systems between cyclones and anticyclones where it would be safe. Then I followed Kat downstairs. Soon the police car drew up and Mum and Aunt Gloria took the same places on the sofa and Dad showed in Detective Inspector Pierce, who was on her own. She sat on the same chair as yesterday. Nobody said anything for a minute. Then Kat went up to her and offered her the souvenir photograph. "I'm sorry we didn't give it to you sooner," Kat said. "I meant to yesterday, but we forgot, didn't we, Ted?" I said. Detective Inspector Pierce took the photo and shook her head and smiled. "We already have that one, Kat," she said, "along with 64 others, but thanks anyway." Aunt Gloria grabbed the photograph and peered at it. "What is this?" "It's a picture of the people in the pod, Aunt Gloria," I explained. "The pod that—" "Not a trace of Salim in any of them, I'm afraid," Detective Inspector Pierce said. "Not in the CCTV footage. I've been checking much of it myself. In that particular pod, a rather large gentleman. She leaned over and pointed to the big white-haired man in the raincoat. Stood in the same spot for nearly the whole ride and blocked much of the camera's view. Aunt Gloria tossed the picture down on the floor near my feet. I picked it up. "You know what I think?" she said. "I think he never went up that damn wheel in the first place." "That's an interesting theory, Aunt Gloria," I said, "and one that I considered too. But Ted," Mum said. She put a finger to her lip. That is body language. Even I have learned to read. It means be quiet. There was another silence. Then the inspector said she had a possible lead. A boy matching Salim's description had been seen at 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon by a guard at Euston Station, dodging the ticket barrier and getting on a train just a moment before the doors were locked. "A train? What train?" Aunt Gloria said. "An intercity between London and Manchester." "Manchester? But that's where we just come from. But why would Salim go back there?" "The boy, if it was Salim, was on his own. Unfortunately, that's where we lose sight of him. The guard on the train has no memory of him. He could have got up any stops in between, but the Manchester police are checking to see if Salim is perhaps in Manchester." "With his dad?" Aunt Gloria said. "He is not with his father, I'm afraid. It was the first place we looked." The inspector produced Salim's address book. "We've spoken to everybody you told us he was close to. His cousins Ramesh and Yasmin, your neighbours, the Tysons, his school friend Marcus Flood, and his old friend from primary school, Paul Burridge. And none of them say they've heard from him since you left the day before yesterday." I said. "That's—" "Hush, Ted," said Mum. "If Salim did go to Manchester," Detective Inspector Pearce said to Aunt Gloria, "where do you think he'd be most likely to go?" Aunt Gloria stared into the space in front of her, then sighed. "I don't think," she said. "Sorry?" "I think the boy on the train is like the boy last night, the boy in the morgue, the boy you thought was Salim and wasn't." Detective Inspector Pearce reached over and touched Aunt Gloria's hand. "I'm sincerely sorry about that, Gloria. We didn't have a proper photo ID then. We do now." From a brown envelope she'd been holding, she took out a photo of Salim and showed it to us. "Your ex-husband gave us this. Would you say it's a good likeness?" Salim was in a school blazer with a sweatshirt underneath and a faint line of a moustache over his lips. He was not looking either happy or sad in the photograph because his lips were straight, neither up nor down. "That's him," Aunt Gloria whispered. "I bought 2 copies so that Salim could give one to his father, to Rashid. I do it every year. I don't know why. I don't even know if Rashid has them framed. The doorbell rang. Dad went out into the hall to see who it was, and I heard voices. And then in walked a tall Indian man in jeans and a green shirt." "Speak of the devil," Aunt Gloria hissed. I only heard her say this because I was standing next to her. I didn't see anything particularly satanic about the strange man. I thought he must be another plainclothes officer. My hand flapped. "What's this?" the man said. "Have you found my son?" He looked at Aunt Gloria. She looked at him. "What are you doing here?" "I'm looking for my son. What else? Trust you to lose him." Maybe Satan had entered the room after all, because everybody started talking very loudly. I put my hands over my ears, but I could still hear them. I counted the people in the room. 7. I tried to guess the ages of those I didn't know. Then I added up the ages, actual or approximate, of all present. When I arrived at the figure of 233 and worked out the average age was 33.3 recurring, everyone was still shouting their heads off. The difference between laughing your head off and shouting your head off is that with one you are happy and with the other you are angry. I like it much better when people are laughing their heads off. Detective Inspector Pearce got up from her chair. "I'd better go," she said, "but I'm not sure that anyone listened except for me and Dad, who had not joined in the shouting either." Dad showed her out to the hallway and I followed. You could still hear the raised voices in the living room. "Goodbye, Mr. Spark," Detective Inspector Pearce said. "I'm sorry again about last night." I felt Dad's arm on my shoulder tighten. "Will you find out who that poor boy was?" "We're working on it," Inspector Pearce said. "And as for Salim, when everyone's calmed down, can you ask them if they would agree to us calling in the press?" "The press?" "Yes, if Salim's picture gets into the news stories, somebody who's seen him might come forward." Dad nodded. I'll ask them. Inspector Pierce, I said. My hand flapped. Salim got a call on his mobile yesterday at approximately 10:50 a.m. He said it was from a friend calling from Manchester to say goodbye. Did he? How interesting. She smiled at me, which meant she and I could be friends. If only some of my officers had half your brains, Ted. Then she nodded and walked down the tiny garden path to where the police car was parked. Dad and I went back to the living room. Rashid was saying that the police had burst into his busy evening surgery last night, and that all his patients must have thought he was another Dr. Death, which was the name newspaper editors gave to a very evil doctor who killed dozens of his patients instead of making them better, for no reason other than that he liked doing this. Aunt Gloria was clinging to a cushion as if she was about to throw it at him, and saying that all he ever cared about was what other people thought about him. Mum was standing up and holding Kat by the elbow and ushering us back into the hallway. She closed the living room door behind her. God almighty, let's leave them to it, she said. Let's go get a pizza, for pity's sake. So we did. Pitty must have been pleased because we had 4 enormous pizzas at the pizza restaurant nearby. I had a Coca-Cola, and Kat had Sprite, and Mum had a beer, and Dad had a bottle of sparkling water. Dad and I ate all of ours, and Mum and Kat swapped their last slice and left only bits of the crust, which meant that everybody had been extremely hungry, and over the meal we did not talk about Salim. I talked about thunderstorms and why they happen, and Kat showed Dad how she had removed the silver nail polish from her hands, and he said he was glad Catwoman had gone back to the moon. When we got back, Rashid and Aunt Gloria were sitting on the sofa together, arm in arm. This puzzled me until I remembered what Mum says about Kat and me having a love-hate relationship, and I worked out that the same was true of Rashid and Aunt Gloria. Mum said to Rashid he was welcome to sleep on the couch if he wanted to, and he said was she sure, and she said she was, and he said she was most kind and he would, and then Kat and I were told to go upstairs to bed, so we did. Chapter 20. Eavesdropping. Kat curled up on the lilo and went to sleep. The house went quiet. Kat made a funny lapping noise like a dog drinking water. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of Salim, seeing his face with his lips turned up, fading in and out of the spokes of the London eye. Then I remembered him saying I looked like a cool dude and telling me that he got lonely. The boy on the slab. The boy on the train. Salim or not Salim. I switched on the desk light. Kat didn't wake. She just moaned and turned over. I got my weather system book off my desk and looked at the photo of Kat and me on the bridge as taken by Salim. I don't know much about photos, but I could see it was a good photo, not like the kind I take, because the lines around our faces were sharp and we were exactly in the middle of the shoot. A small strip of the eye's wheel came up from my shoulder with 7 of the 32 pods shining in the sunlight. I put the photo back in its hiding place, between the chapters on cyclones and anticyclones, I thought. Cyclones go anti-clockwise, anticyclones go clockwise. That's if you're in the northern hemisphere. If you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the other way round. It's like water whirling down a plug hole. In the northern hemisphere, it whooshes anti-clockwise. In the south, clockwise. And I realised that the same is true of the London Eye. I'd always thought of it as going anti-clockwise. If you look at it from the south bank of the river, that's how it goes. But, a big but, if you look at it from the north bank, it goes clockwise. Whirlwinds and wheels, clockwise or anti-clockwise, depending on how you look at it. Nematodes, such as earthworms, male or female, depending on how you look at it. Then there's Dad's favourite saying, a glass, half empty or half full, depending on how you look at it. I scratched my head. Depending on how you look at it. The same object can be or do opposite things at once. I remembered a picture Kat had once shown me of a waterfall, only the way it was painted it looked as if the water was flowing upwards. Perhaps this was a clue to Salim's disappearance. Perhaps Kat and I were looking at things the wrong way up, or the wrong way round. I got excited then because I am good at looking at things differently. When I was little, I once drew an egg as 3 rings, the shell, the white, and the yolk. It looked like the planet Saturn, and the teacher at school said it was a very unusual way to draw an egg. She said I had drawn it in cross-section, as if I had X-ray eyes and could see straight through it. I tried to look at Salim riding in his pod with X-ray eyes, but I could only see figures in the pod, dark shadows, turning to have their souvenir photo taken. So next, I picked up the souvenir shot. After Aunt Gloria had tossed it on the floor earlier, and the police had said they didn't want it, I'd taken it back up to my desk. I studied the African women, the big white-haired man, the fat couple and their children, the Japanese tourists. All I could see of the girl in the pink jacket who'd stood near us in the queue was her arm waving at the camera above the other people. I could not see her boyfriend, nor the tall blonde woman with the grey-haired man who was shorter than her. It had been a crowded pod. Not everyone had fitted into the picture. Salim might have been at the back somewhere, behind the shoulders and cluttered bodies. I tried to look in between the torsos with X-ray eyes, but it was grey, murky shadow, tiny dots, nothing more. I pushed it away. I got up and crept downstairs to the kitchen. I knew where Mum kept the salt and vinegar crisps hidden. I needed some. I took 2 packets out and crept back into the hallway. I paused. The living room door was ajar, and I could hear Aunt Gloria's voice. I decided to listen in case there was a clue. Maybe Aunt Gloria knew something that she didn't realise she knew, but if I heard it, I would be able to see the significance. Mum has told me it is wrong to eavesdrop on people. Eavesdropping is a strange word. Eaves are the parts of roofs that project over the walls. The only thing that drops from them is rainwater, and rainwater cannot hear. Cat eavesdrops all the time. She lurks in the hallway when Mum and Dad are talking about serious matters such as school reports, and if I tell her it is wrong to do this, she hisses at me to get lost. But tonight I decided to eavesdrop myself. I hate waiting, Aunt Gloria was saying. I know you do. It was Rashid. Patience. And you, they don't go. We should call in the press, Rashid, like Inspector Pearce says. Not yet, Gloria. I don't want our private affairs all over the place. There you go again, always caring about what other people think. What does it matter? What matters is Salim. OK, Gloria, we'll call the press tomorrow, if Salim isn't found by then. There was a pause. I heard a groan and the sofa creaking. I'd do anything just to know Salim was alive, somewhere, anywhere, unharmed, she said. He is, trust me, I feel it in my bones. I hope your bones are right, said Aunt Gloria. Oh, Rashid, if he comes back safe, let's be in touch more. It hasn't been good for him, our never talking. Why are you taking him to New York, then? I nearly put an injunction on you. You didn't. I did. You never told me you were planning. I only learned about it from Salim. But I need the money, Rashid. I pay you every month, don't I? As we agreed. It's not enough. I need a good salary too. Why? To pay for all your clothes? The voices were getting louder again. I edged backwards towards the stairs. You can rise as far up in your profession as you want, Gloria said. Why can't I? You're impossible, Gloria. You only ever think of yourself. That's a lie. I'm the one who looks after Salim day in, day out. He's lived with me all his life. He's mine. He goes where I go. Salim, Rashid said, is Salim. He doesn't belong to either of us. There was a pause. I stood still. The sofa creaked again. You're right, Aunt Gloria said. If anything happens to Salim, you say you'd never forgive me, but I'd never forgive myself. Her voice wobbled as if she was going to cry. I crept up the first stair. Don't blame yourself, Gloria, Rashid said. Then I heard him groan. Salim asked me something the last time he visited me. What? He asked me if he could come to live with me. I don't believe it. He did. Never. Impossible. I don't know if he meant it, but he did ask. What did you say? I said that I was too busy every day at the surgery, that he was better off with his mother, that he should go off to New York. It was a fine city. I said no, don't even sit down and talk to him about it. He asked just as I was rushing out to a patient. I turned a deaf ear to him, Gloria. Oh, Rashid, don't you start. I can't stand to see grown men cry. Rustles, chokes, sighs. Then I guessed what came next. My hair stood on end. They were kissing. From the sound of it, it was the long tongue like eels kind that Kat told me about a couple of years back. She says that they do it in the movies when their cheeks move about, that they do it in the school corridors when the teachers aren't looking, that Mum and Dad do it when we're not looking. My mum threatens us with weird punishments sometimes. If I forget to change my school shirt 3 days running, she'll yank it off me, screech at the state of the collar, and threaten to hang me on the washing line by my toenails if I forget to change it next time. She's joking, you realise. But if you were to ask me, what would I prefer, being hung from a washing line by my toenails, or having to be kissed by somebody like Aunt Gloria, I know which I would choose. The washing line, every time. I fled upstairs as fast as I could. I'd had enough eavesdropping for one night. Chapter 21. Mix and match. I got back into bed, careful not to wake Kat. I munched on my crisps, letting them soften in my mouth before I bit into them, so as to make less noise. Quietly I got out the list of theories and the photos, I thought. I bunched up the washing line photos and put them on the desk. Then I went through the others. I finished one packet of crisps and opened a second. Halfway through the packet I stopped munching and stared. I looked at another shot and stared at that too. "Kat!" I hissed. I shook her shoulder hard. She raised herself from the pillow, holding her head between her hands. "Oh, what a dream! What is it?" She blinked up at me from the lilo. "The strange man, Kat," I said. "The man who sold us the ticket." She shook her head. "Yeah," she yawned. This is what it sounded like. "What about him?" "I found him," I squeaked. Kat's eyes went round. She looked confused, so I showed her the photo that I'd taken, the one that had gone wrong with the headless bodies. I pointed to a torso of a man with a jacket flapping over a T-shirt. "That's him," I said. "How do you know? He just looks like someone else in a crowd, and anyway, what's he got to do with it?" "Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." Kat put her head to one side like I do sometimes because it helps you to think. My theory is that it allows blood to pour into the side of the brain you need for whatever bit of thinking it is you have to do. The right-hand side is for logical deduction and analytical thinking, and the left-hand side is for creative thought, and I think it is from this side that inspiration comes from. "It was odd the way he came up to us," Kat said. "You could say suspicious, or maybe just coincidence." She picked up the picture and looked at it again. "Don't say you remember him just from that. You never notice what people wear." "No, not from that picture on its own, Kat, but I look at this one too." I showed her the photo taken just before by Salim. Salim had snapped one of the eye, but lopped the top part off because he was too close. In the foreground was part of the queue and various bystanders. When you looked really hard at the individual people in it, you could see the head and shoulders of a man facing towards the camera. It was only the size of a pea, but enough of the face was recognisable. "That's him," I said. Kat looked hard. "You're right, Ted. It is him." She took the other photo. "That's his head and shoulders, and this is his chest and trousers. They match." I got a magnifying glass out of my desk drawer. We looked at the pictures together. It was a game of mix and match, head and tail, fitting together things that belonged, a jigsaw. "There's something written on his T-shirt," Kat said, peering through the glass. "Can't make it out." "I know, and a T for sure. The rest's blurred." She looked at me. "You know, Ted, this might be a breakthrough." She clapped me on the shoulder so hard I coughed. "Tomorrow I'm going back to the school shop with the photo shop with the negatives. I'm going to ask them to blow up the 2 shots. But Ted, don't say anything to anyone about this." "What about Mum?" And she'd only ignore us if we tried to explain. "No, I'm following up this lead on my own." "Not on your own, Kat." She clapped me on the shoulder again. "With you, Ted, of course. We'll figure out what it says on the T-shirt, and maybe, just maybe, we'll track him down." I was so excited I forgot to hum. "Ted, can't stand to say it, but you're a genius." And she grabbed the packet of crisps I'd been eating and scoffed the lot.